All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime Loser. I hope you're doing well. So, folks, I have one for the books for you today. I'm going to tell you the story of a court hearing that came out of the small town of Sturgis, Michigan. It was done over Zoom, so everybody's up on the screen in their square, desperately fumbling to figure out the audio. And this small town court Zoom hearing that sure everybody thought was going to be business as usual, nothing to see here type of thing, over the past month has gone completely viral, become a worldwide saga, and if you added up all of the views, all of the clips that were posted about it, I would say the whole thing has gotten upwards of 15 million views in a month. So, here's the story. On February 9th, a 911 call comes in. The caller was a woman named Mary Lindsay. She had just gotten into an absolute horror show of a fight with her boyfriend, Colby. So, it's Colby and Mary, and they had gotten into a fight at Mary's apartment. Mary had told Colby, even though there was already a no contact order between them from previous domestic violence incident, so they're not even supposed to see each other anyway. Sounds like the relationship was in the toilet. So they're not supposed to see each other, but Mary had told Colby, I'm not going to come back to my apartment tonight. But she either lied or changed her mind, came back to her apartment. Colby was there, was furious. They got into a horrific fight. I'll read you the charges that came from it. But at a certain point during the whole mess, Mary calls a family member, I think her aunt, and the aunt comes and parks in the parking lot of the store across the street. At a certain point, Mary is able to escape the fight and run across the street, get into her aunt's car, and they drive out of there. It's that point when she's in the car driving away that she calls 911. She sounds distraught. She's crying. She's going, I thought my boyfriend was going to kill me, held a crowbar up against my mouth. Just horrible stuff. So that all happened. Oh yeah, but the cops came to her place, arrested Colby. He got 3 felony charges from that fight, and they read as follows. 1, assault with intent of great bodily harm, less than murder, regarding use of crowbar against complainant's face. Threat of knocking out teeth / strangling her. Charge 2, felony assault, threatening her with a jack, smashing it next to her head on the bed. And 3, felony domestic violence. I guess in Michigan, your third domestic violence becomes a felony. Colby has had 2 previously, so if he's convicted of this one, it becomes much more serious. But the felony domestic violence charge is based on, during the argument, it's alleged that Colby poured water and raspberry vinaigrette on Mary, slapped her, pinned her on the bed. So all that is just absolutely horrific. So that's on February 9th. The first court hearing is less than a month later. It's now the infamous court hearing on March 2nd. Like I said, it's done over Zoom, so you have the judge, the prosecutor. Everybody's got their square. The judge, the prosecutor, her name is Deborah Davis. She really became a bit of a superhero throughout this whole thing, which is deserving, as you'll see. So you got Deborah Davis. I just think none of them knew how many views this thing was going to get. You know, you're a prosecutor in Sturgis, Michigan. Like Deborah Davis this day, she wore a sweater that matched the highlights in her hair. And I was thinking that was a good day to wear the old sweater highlight combo because, like I said, it was all of a sudden everyone in the world is watching it. So you have the judge, prosecutor, Deborah Davis, the defense attorney, who becomes kind of a funny character throughout the whole thing. His name is Paul Gibson. He's a nice, soft-spoken guy, which Colby is not a nice, soft-spoken guy. He screams and goes completely nuts, and then his lawyer is just this quiet, kind of low-energy guy named Paul Gibson, who's got his law degrees hung behind him. He's got a little statue of a border collie, and so he is Colby's stuck with the task of defending Colby, and there's a law enforcement officer, Edgington, is in there. A cop, he's got his own square. And so the court hearing starts pretty normal. They're like, okay, the complaining witness is Mary, so she's here. That's who they're going to question. And so Deborah Davis, the prosecutor, starts by questioning Mary. And as you can imagine, it would be hard to talk about the person that assaulted you or abused you, or you're in that nightmare of a relationship, it'd be hard to be honest, even though it's on Zoom. But with having Colby's Zoom square right there, just looking at you, I'm right here in the Zoom square, baby. It would be hard to talk about some of that stuff. And so the questioning starts. Deborah goes, all right, Mary, can you identify Colby? Like in the Zoom screen. And she goes, yeah, he's the one wearing a gray hoodie. And Deborah Davis goes, all right, let the record show he's the only one wearing a hoodie. And we haven't heard Colby talk yet until this point. And for the first time, well, first he raises his arm, revealing that it's actually a t-shirt hoodie. And then the first time you hear him speak, he says, quote, it's actually a short sleeve shirt hoodie thing. And if you're in a hearing facing 3 serious felonies, I think it's a bad omen if the first thing you talk about is your t-shirt hoodie. It's not a good sign for how things are going to go. But okay, so she identifies Colby. He's the one wearing a hoodie. He normally wears a hat, but he's not wearing a hat. All right, so he's identified. Then they start, Deborah Davis, the prosecutor, starts asking questions about that night. And it's quickly obvious that the way Mary is talking about it is very watered down compared to the 911 call, and I'm sure the prosecutor had talked to Mary before the actual questioning. They always usually tell them all the questions that they're going to ask, so they're not surprised or anything. So you can tell the prosecutor, Deborah Davis, is a little bit perplexed because the way Mary's talking about it is, yeah, we got into a fight, but it was actually a quick fight. We were both mad. It was really accusatory. And it's just really not the same tone as I think Deborah Davis, the prosecutor, was expecting. And so she, I think, figures, okay, well, let's back it up a little bit. And so she decides to ask questions that will more get it into the direction that she feels like it should probably be going, except it's probably hard for Mary to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it. So she just asked, Mary, did the cops come that night? And Mary goes, yeah. And she goes, well, why did the cops come? And Mary goes, well, because they were called. And, you could see Deborah Davis's face being like, okay, what is going on? And she goes, all right, well, who called the cops? And Mary goes, technically me, which is kind of a bizarre answer, right? Like, most people would just be like, I did, because I had a crowbar jammed in my mouth. But she goes, technically me. And then Deborah Davis, the prosecutor, goes, okay, well, when the cops got there, what did you tell them happened? And at that point, Colby's lawyer objects, and he says, object, Your Honor, isn't that hearsay? Shouldn't she ask what happened that night instead of what did you tell the cops happened that night? And so Paul Gibson is explaining his objection. The judge is hearing Paul Gibson, the defense attorney's objection. And at this point, you see Mary, and if you're not looking, I wouldn't have noticed if you're not looking, but you see Mary look off to the side in her Zoom screen. And then all of a sudden, Colby's Zoom screen disappears. And you could say, all right, well, he lost service and he popped back in. And Paul Gibson, the defense attorney, is still, softly explaining his objection that he thinks it's hearsay. And Deborah Davis snipes it. She sees it and she kind of interrupts it. Paul, like I said, is explaining his objection and she interrupts and goes, Your Honor, I have reason to believe that the defendant and the complaining witness are in the same apartment, and I am extremely scared for Mary's safety. I mean, you heard the charges. Terrible stuff. So, Colby, if that is true, is capable of some scary things. So she goes, I am extremely scared for the safety, and I want like a wellness type thing. I want confirmation that she is safe. And you see Colby in his Zoom screen when Deborah Davis is going, I want confirmation I want confirmation that they're not in the same apartment. You see Colby's face go, what? And then the judge goes, Mary, where are you? And Mary goes, a house. And the way that she says, the tone of that, you know it is about to go down. She goes, a house, and the judge goes, what house? And she goes, it's my house. And he goes, what's the address? And she gives the address again, and he goes, okay. And the judge's kind of going in that slow timing that judges go, so it makes the whole thing anticipation build. And he goes, Colby, where are you at? And Colby just shoots off a different address, like 158 Lafayette Street, just really quick lie, boom. And the judge goes, okay, what are you on, a phone, a laptop, what do you want? And Colby goes, a phone, and what's got to be the first in courtroom history and surely the last. The judge goes, all right, well, I want you to take your phone outside and show me the house number of where you're at so I know that you're not in the same place as the complaining witness. And Colby goes, why? That's what he says to the judge. He goes, why? And he's scrambling because he is in the same room as the complaining witness, and probably the number one stipulation of his bond for not going to jail for the whole pretrial of these was another no contact. So it was a really serious bond violation if he is with her. Not only just being friendly, but intimidating her while she's questioning. And so he's got nothing. Colby has got nothing to say. He just goes, what? And then he's saying, I don't think the phone has enough charge, and I'm hooked up to this wall charger. And like I said, he's just scrambling for something to say. And at that moment, Deborah Davis, the prosecutor, has been in cahoots silently with Officer Edgington, the law enforcement guy that's in his Zoom square. And they, during that, had gotten officers to Mary's door. And so while Colby's going, oh man, the phone, I can't go outside, it's only got 2% charge. Again, Deborah Davis just interrupts and goes, the police are at Mary's door. The police are at Mary's door. And so the judge goes, Mary, go answer the door. And then Deborah Davis goes, Mary, bring your phone with you so we know you're safe. And so you see Mary's Zoom square start moving and get blurry as she gets up to go let the police in. And Colby is stuck in a Zoom square prison because I'm sure all he wants to do as he hears the police knocking at the door and the whole thing is run or do something. But he is stuck pretending that he's not there and that everything is fine. So he has to have a poker face on. So he's just sitting there in his Zoom screen acting like, yeah, I'm definitely not about to be arrested for bond violation. Pretend you're not going to be arrested for bond violation. And slowly you see his eyes look towards the door and he's looking real scared. And then all of a sudden he gets up, revealing that he's wearing shorts and the hoodie t-shirt to his court hearing where he's facing 3 felonies. But anyway, he gets up and then his Zoom screen disappears. Oh yeah, right when Mary answered the door, her Zoom screen disappeared. You heard the cops be like, it's going to be here, and then it disappears. So now, in a bizarre twist, the judge is sitting there, the prosecutor is sitting there, Officer Edgington is sitting there, and Paul Daly, the defense attorney, is sitting there, and the complaining witness and the defendant are both gone. And they're just kind of sitting there, and it's looking like to them that Colby is in fact there, and the judge is not happy. He is not happy that happened on his watch. That's terrifying for Mary to be trying to answer those tough questions about that fight with Colby in the room, looking at her, telling her what to say. So you could tell the judge is a little bit mad, going, this has never happened before. And they're sitting there, and I'm pretty sure the hearing is adjourned, and they're sitting there dumbfounded. And then all of a sudden there's a voice, like a crackly voice, and it's only audio, and you just hear, Your Honor, Your Honor. And the judge goes, yeah, hello? Who am I speaking to? And you just hear this voice go, Colby. And it's like, no way. and it's a stroke of luck from the footage gods. Actually, the prosecutor had already said, Your Honor, I think we should adjourn. I'm sure Deborah Davis just wanted to get on the phone with Mary and be like, are you all right? Oh my God, do we need to add charges? But the judge had said, hold on, let's wait a second. And they're just sitting there, and then they hear, Your Honor. And he goes, who am I speaking to? And he goes, it's Colby. And unbelievably, Mary, the complaining witness, Zoom screen pops back up. So it has Mary Lindsay in the bottom left corner, and it's Colby with his hands behind his back with two cops behind him. He's got a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and he goes, Your Honor, Mary and I both don't want the no contact. I asked for that to be dropped. I'm sorry I lied to you. He's got this whole I'm sorry, man, tone in his voice. And it's delusional. He's sitting there with a cigarette with the hearing technically adjourned, asking the judge, I asked for the no contact to be dropped. And the tone of voice, it sounds like he thinks there's a chance that the judge is going to go, you know what? You're right. As long as you guys both want it dropped, it's dropped. It's just crazy going, sorry, man. And he's got the cigarette, and the judge goes, Colby, I advise you not to say anything else. Take the cigarette out of your mouth. In perfect comic timing, the cigarette had pathetically fallen out of his mouth right before the judge had said that. The judge goes, your bond is canceled. If you had $10 million, you couldn't bond out. And in one of the most unbelievable things that we'll probably ever see in the Zoom era, the judge told law enforcement through the complaining witness's Zoom account to take the defendant to jail for a bond violation that they witnessed live. I mean, that is wild, okay? So then Colby, who it was a miracle that he didn't have to go sit in jail for the whole thing, just screwed himself by doing the whole intimidate the witness in the same apartment thing. So now he has zero chance to get bond on this one. So 2 weeks later, that was the one that went completely viral. So I'll put that one in the description as first court hearing. Then 2 weeks later is the second court hearing on March 16th. And that one, they get there, it's the same thing. Now Colby is in green and white striped inside the jail. For most of this one, they had to turn his audio off. He just goes nuts like this. Just goes completely berserk, muted. And so his screen, he's just going nuts the whole time. But the same players, same Zoom. You're going to tell everybody over the 2 weeks had really soaked up all of the, that is wild how many people have talked about this and watched it. So you get the second hearing, and Mary, the complaining witness, was subpoenaed again, but this time she didn't show up. So they start the hearing this time by saying, Colby called the complaining witness, Mary, even though he was not supposed to contact her. Again, he called her either 4 or 6 times from jail, which they're recorded, and the judge says that in those phone calls, he told Mary not to testify. So that's, again, it's against the law, so they're talking about adding charges for that. And so she's not there. Mary's not there. They got this. And it was funny when the judge goes, yeah, he told her that to not testify. And those calls are recorded. And Colby's going, yep, as if, I don't know, as if he didn't tell her that. So I would be interested in hearing those calls. But then out of nowhere, they're like, okay, Lindsay is here. Or I'm sorry, Mary Lindsay is her full name, but they say Mary is here, and so they start the questioning again, and they as she pops up, Colby blows her like a creepy kiss, and just Colby doesn't do any favors for himself. So they do the questioning again, and they get into the horrific details this time, and they think, I guess, Colby is turned on mute because he was going nuts, but I don't know if he was able to unmute himself. But in just another bizarre little thing in this case is they're in Deborah Davis and Mary are in the thick of the questions, and Mary's talking about, yeah, I told the officers that I was scared, and then you just hear Colby's voice go, she was high, and the judge is like, oh my gosh, sorry, I was trying to unmute her, or I thought I had him muted, sorry, and just another little like outburst from Colby, and then it's wrapping up, and you gotta watch. You really, if you've only seen the first one, you gotta watch the second one. It's an hour and 15 minutes, and if you haven't seen any of them, I've really got your next hour and a half of wild viewing. You gotta watch the first one and then the second one. But because Colby was going just absolutely berserk and screaming and telling Mary that you were high while she's talking about all the hard stuff, they had him muted and even taken off the Zoom screen for most of the time. But as the hearing is wrapping up, I think they feel weird, like he hasn't had any time to talk or anything. And even Deborah Davis is like, let's hear what he has to say. So they unmute him, and he goes, I would like to fire my attorney, Paul Gibson. Paul Gibson is a bum-ass dude, and he shouldn't be practicing this profession. I gave him a list of 12 questions to ask Lindsay. He didn't ask any of them, and he's just going nuts and completely agitated. And finally, they got to mute him again, and the judge is like, well, that didn't go well. And the judge said something funny. They had the new charges that came in from the jailhouse phone calls telling Mary not to testify. They had put Paul Gibson as his lawyer for those charges too. So the judge had to be like, all right, Paul. And Paul just seems like the nicest guy, and compared to his client, who's just like, and they're like, Paul, we'll probably have to put someone else on those other charges. He was very agitated. So we probably won't see Paul Gibson in the next hearing, but what a story out of Sturgis, Michigan. It really is wild viewing. Check it out. I'm going to cut it off there. I love you all. I will see you soon. Why? Stiving Y. Shamita.